philosophy behind defense is you try to limit the offense's capabilities or options. When I'm playing defense, the first thing I try to notice is some of the weaknesses of the offensive player. And noticing, I look at his tendencies. Does he like to go right? Does he like to go left? Can he use his right? Can he use his left? Does he like to shoot? Or can he shoot? If he can shoot, I'm going to make him drive. If he can't shoot, well, I'm going to back off and make sure he doesn't drive, forcing him to do things that he doesn't want to do. And as a defensive player, that's what you try to do to an offensive player. You try to put him in an uncomfortable situation so he cannot be as effective. A good stance, and you got many ways of coaches trying to teach players how to get into a good defensive stance. What I was always taught, is to try to be shoulder width apart. I like to put my right foot forward so that I can either direct the defensive player or offensive player where he wants to go. And I can react a little bit better if I'm not too wide. If I'm just shoulder width apart, I think that I can react a little bit easier. If I'm on the ball of my feet, then I'm active. I can move a lot quicker. If I'm on the heels of my foot, then that means I have to get to the ball of my feet and then react to the offensive player. Sounds complicated, which is probably why most people don't want to play defense. Now, if I know the offensive player cannot go right, then I'm going to try to force him right. So I'm putting my right foot forward, giving him the direction in terms of where I'm trying to force him, and preventing him from going the way that he probably wants to go, which is left. Now, if my offensive player wants to go left, then I am going to try to force him totally opposite of where he wants to go. So I'm going to force him right. If he wants to go right, then I'm going to force him left. So that means I have to put my left foot forward and influence the offensive player to go this way. If I'm guarding the guy at the center of the basketball court, because my reaction is a little bit better going to my left, I am going to put my right hand or my right foot forward, forcing the offensive player that way. Now, in terms of your hands, what do you do with your hands? A lot of coaches say your right hand is going to be mirroring the basketball. So if the offensive player is starting to look for a pass, you, as a defensive player, is going to sit here and mirror the basketball so that you can kind of deflect the basketball and not give him a direct passing lane to the offensive player or his other offensive player. Your left hand, if you're taking a right foot stance where your right foot is ahead of the left and you're trying to influence him to go to his right, your left, it's going to be sitting here charming at the basketball, trying to flick the basketball. Not this way, because that's how you get fouls. If the offensive player is there, you're mirroring the basketball and you're doing this, trying to flick the basketball loose. And if you're coming from underneath the basketball, you're not as opted to foul the offensive player coming from underneath as you are coming from over the top. So they teach you to keep your hands here, mirror the basketball, don't give any passing lanes to the defense. I'm never scared to do things on the basketball court. Sure, I'm nervous because of the challenges, maybe the events that's happening around the game itself. But once I'm out there in the motion of playing, I have total confidence in my basketball skills, and that's going to get me to be comfortable once the game starts. But once the game started, I am not nervous. Before the game, I could be nervous. I'm pretty much nervous at every game. But once the ball goes up for the jump ball, I think all that nervousness just kind of goes away, and I revert back to things that I've practiced, things that seem to be very routine, and I'm very comfortable in that environment. Now, in movement, when you move, as I was saying, as an offensive player, they want to attack the front foot. The reason being is, in a correct defensive movement, as you open up to guard the offensive player going to your right, to his left, you have to pivot. You have to pick up this foot, pivot, drop step, and then slide, keeping your defensive stance, keeping your balance, keeping your butt parallel to the floor, staying in a low position so you can move a lot quicker. Once you come out of your position and stand up, you got to go back down here before you move again. So most defensive coaches try to get you in a nice little balance where your butt is parallel to the floor and you're on the balls of your feet, Your hands are mirroring the basketball. Your left is here flicking at the basketball. When you open up, you stay in that stance, step and slide. That's step and slide. That is the way you try to maintain a certain defensive position against an offensive player. Once you come out of that position, you're in a very vulnerable position because now you got to get back into that position and then react to the offensive player. Now you see why it's a lot of work. And no one likes to do it, but yet, if you're going to be a complete basketball player, you got to be able to play both ends. And in playing both ends, you can't just score, you got to be able to play defense as well. Now, I'm going to bring my offensive player out here. Now I'm going to look at his stance. I'm going to look at the way he's positioning the ball. You remember, as an offensive player, I always said you have to protect the basketball. So if he's not protecting the basketball, I can flick at the basketball. So you look for that. Now, if he is protecting the basketball, that means he's pretty good. He knows his offensive moves. He's trying to really dictate what I'm trying to give him or force him to go. Well, as a defensive player, I'm trying to take away his options. So I'm going to step up, mirror the basketball, limit his options, force him to go one way. That way I can slide a lot easier going this way if I can feel I can influence the offensive player to go this way and keep him going that way, and then I'm more or less guarding the player, guarding the offensive player. If I can do that, my job is done. If I can limit his options. Now, if he's a good offensive player, he wants to maximize his options. He may want to attack this front foot, which in essence now, if he comes this way, I got to drop step, slide, not coming out of my defensive stance because now I'm giving him the advantage because I got to get back in my stance and slow him down and get back in front of him. So, as a defensive player, you got to work hard. You got to work hard to take away his options and limit his options. But at the same time, when he attacks you, you have to be in a good enough position to play good, solid defense. You should never come out of your stance. You should always be in your stance with the ball at your feet. Hands are very active, moving, trying to limit his passing, trying to aggravate him as an offensive player, create mistakes if he can make mistakes. If he's not really good, sound offensive player, he's going to give you some options to attack him from. You just have to pick those options carefully. And not with your hands, not with poor defensive stances, but with adequate and certain fundamentals as a defensive player. So if I'm playing him, and I'm moving, I'm stepping and sliding, I'm sliding, using my body, using my slide, standing in front of him, trying to contend his offensive capabilities. And then when he starts going different directions, I'm still stepping and sliding. Still stepping and sliding. I'm always balanced. I'm always on the ball of my feet. All right? Takes a lot of work. No one says it's going to be easy, but to be a complete basketball player, you got to be able to play defense as well. Let's talk about seeing your man and the basketball. It's a lot of ways that coaches teach that are not really correct in the sense that you have to turn your head back and forth. We call that your head's on a swivel. It's just constantly moving back and forth. Well, the easiest way to attack that is to keep your head straight at your target, or straight at a straight line, using your peripheral vision to see the ball and your man. You can see these 2 points, and you can point to them. You don't have to do this, because every time you do this, you lose your man or the ball for a split second. But if you're keeping your head straight and using your vision this way, you can see the ball, you can see your man. When the ball starts to move, you start to move, you change your focus point that much more so you can still maintain that peripheral vision that you can see both the ball and your man. Now, if you're going to sit there the whole time and do this and this, this and this, well, every time you're here, you lose the ball. Every time you're here, you lose your man. Even though you think you're fast enough to see both, some players in our league, professional league, it only takes that little split second for you to lose your man or the ball before you're at a disadvantage. So, if you're learning early on in your years and you want to learn now and work hard at it, focus on a point between the ball and your man and keep your head steady. And you can see both. I promise you. I really don't understand the physics of jumping and how you increase that. The things that I can say that I did when I was a kid to improve my jumping are very basic things. I used to ride the bicycle a lot. I used to work on jumping. I used to just try to jump and try to dunk. And I guess if you exercise that muscle to that activity, somehow it's going to improve. How much it improves, No one can really dictate who's going to be the greatest leaper of all time or when the next player is going to be a great leaper. But those are the things, if you work on your jumping to some degree, it's going to improve some. Will it maximize your opportunities? No. I think to be a better basketball player, you don't have to jump high. You just have to be smart in how you utilize the skill that you've been given.